Battlefield 3 is probably one of the most loved titles in the franchise that released in 2011 and had a fantastic track record of gunplay, core mechanics, and DLC. So it's no surprise that Battlefield 3 Remaster is spoken about very frequently, considering the game is nearly a decade old now. For those of you a little less caught up with the news, there has been some speculation / rumors / potential leaks that Battlefield 3 is receiving a remaster that will release later this year with a full option to play it on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, PC, and also PS4 and Xbox One. Now this is a supposed leak or in-game leak from an alleged leaker that has a somewhat okay track record of accurately predicting things that have happened in the franchise. And in this video today I just wanted to talk about this supposed leak. Does it make sense? Is it likely? And will we see something at the end of 2020? Now I do want to start off and underpin this by saying that this is mostly speculation, very much in the realm of, you know, maybe possibly an idea that makes sense. This alleged leaker or supposed leaker, I don't name them because I don't believe in leaking video games early. I feel like it's incredibly damaging to development and marketing and everything in between that traditionally makes a game successful. You only need to look at what's happened recently with The Last of Us 2's ending being revealed online, which was hugely devastating for the people working on the game. I'm not a big fan of it, which is why I don't really name people by names, and I don't like to shine a positive glowing spotlight on it, but I will report on it because it's something that does need to be talked about, and it is something that's being talked about. So take everything you hear here with like a pinch of salt, nothing too seriously. So let's start off with what has been said. Now, the idea of a Battlefield 3 remaster for a lot of people is just common sense, and it's something that's been going around for a while now because Battlefield 3 is this beloved game. It's this game that does no wrong, that sees no evil, does no evil, or hears no evil. It's this incredible thing that a lot of us remember, and I feel like some of that is, of course, rose-tinted glasses of the past, but a lot of it is the fact that Battlefield 3 is just a solid, fantastic modern shooter that was way ahead of its time. It was way ahead of its time in terms of crafting a great first-person shooter experience, in terms of the quality of its DLC. You know, the Aftermath DLC, in my opinion, is still one of the best ever made in the franchise, and it is just a great title, all in all. I feel like a lot of people would appreciate playing this game again in 2020. So it's a very logical thing, you know, to go back and remaster old titles, especially ones that were so advanced for the time that they were set in. Battlefield 3 arguably has some of the best gunplay mechanics and armor / vehicle mechanics in any game of the franchise, and the DLC like Close Quarters, Armored Kill, and Aftermath are unmatched in terms of my opinion of the game. Another hugely important factor to note is that if you played this game on previous generation consoles like Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, there is a large console base of players who have never actually experienced Battlefield 3 to the full potential. Those games were locked at lower player counts and couldn't achieve the 64-player madness that was well renowned on PC and something that was known to be a fantastic feature set of the game. Now, in terms of a remaster, Battlefield 3 honestly graphically looks fantastic already. It would just need some quality of life improvements. In my opinion, the removal of the light blue filter that happens to be on every single map, an updated tick rate or a server refresh rate, and just redeveloped with some life into it, you know. The UI could do with a little bit of work, you know, throw some servers out, including custom servers available to people, and you're on your merry way. People would be playing Battlefield 3 again, 64 players on both console and on PC, and it's a fantastic little option available. Now, this alleged leaker has said that this is going to happen, it's going to happen at the end of the year, and the video has since been taken down. Now, there's been some speculation, again, it's speculation on speculation here, it's speculationception, that the video was taken down because somebody related to the company has asked them to take down, or at least that's what some news outlets are reporting. I don't believe that at all. The strategy I found for EA when it comes to leaks is either reveal your trailer early, as you saw with Star Wars Squadron, the Squadron Assault game. Xbox revealed that early by accident, so they were like, oh, screw it, you know, here's a trailer. Or they just pretend that the leak doesn't exist and take down some parts of it. If the leak gathers too much traction, then they leave it up. Battlefield 1 is a great example of this, as a game that was leaked over a year before the actual game was revealed, and everybody kind of laughed at the leaker and said this isn't real, and EA just pretended the leak didn't exist, and they were very much probably aware of the fact that it was on Reddit and available online, but they just paid no mind to it and revealed the game a year later. So this leaker has a okay track record, you know. I feel like a lot of leakers half of it's just common sense. Like, if I was to tell you next year that there was going to be a Battlefield game called Battlefield that was a modern setting game set between a theoretical conflict between the United States, its allies, and Russia. You could play as British soldiers, the US, or perhaps some European factions like the Germans, and it had modern customization, new weapons, you know, a full arsenal of vehicles and boats and helicopters and air. You would say, yeah, that sounds about right, what would be the next Battlefield game, and a lot of people, believe it or not, would believe what I've just said, because it's very much common sense. And the same applies here. A Battlefield 3 remaster seems to just be common sense, because although the game is pretty great and you can still play it on PC, there are some things that could be improved, and there are a lot of console players out there who obviously would buy the game again to play it as 64 players, and a lot of them never have actually experienced Battlefield 3 to its fullest potential. So the whole track record of this leaker is like I would say a 60-40 affair. He's got some pretty good points that he's made for games that have been revealed, but sometimes I feel like he's just guessing it, and that's the case with most leakers. You know, I don't really believe them. I don't traditionally take leaks to be serious, but it's something worth talking about regardless. But I feel as though, considering the fact that there is no Battlefield in 2020, considering the fact that there has been an alleged leak about this thing, and considering the fact that Battlefield 3 Remastered in a lot of ways would just make sense, it wouldn't surprise me to see something in 2020. But there are some caveats to that, and there are some very important things that are worth talking about, and things that are very much important in terms of whether or not a remaster would exist. So let's talk about it. The first major reason not to buy into any of these leaks is that it, in a lot of ways, makes no sense for Battlefield 3 to release the year before potentially what is most likely a modern shooter. Now, I think it's very obvious that EA and DICE are going to head towards current day, or perhaps, you know, 70s onwards, I'd say, in terms of their next game setting. It doesn't seem to make sense to stay in the World War I, World War II era. You know, at the very earliest, we'd see a Cold War. At the very latest, we'd likely see modern day current setting. I think that just seems to be the rough guesstimate from most people, but it's the thing that makes sense. Now, there's no guarantees of that. You know, I thought after Battlefield 1 we'd see a modern Battlefield, but lo and behold, we got Battlefield 5, so what the hell do I know? But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people are just sort of pointing towards that direction, because in a lot of people's minds, the historical thing's kind of done its path. People are getting a little bit burnt out from it, and releasing another overly historical shooter not only, you know, grounds the development team in having to be historically accurate, quote unquote, but also just makes it, you know, free stints of historical shooters that perhaps is not in the best interest of the franchise and not in the best interest of sales. So releasing Battlefield 3 Remastered the year before a new modern shooter is what's known as market cannibalization. Now, for those of you who are unaware, market cannibalization is when you release a product that directly affects the competition with your own product. EA has done this before, where games like Battlefield and Titanfall will clash at the same time, and although they're not directly the same setting or do the same thing, it's still two first-person shooters from the same company. You know, a lot of Battlefield YouTubers wouldn't play Titanfall at the same time it was released because they've got other things to worry about, whereas if Titanfall was released later in the year, it's a new first-person shooter from EA, and lots of Battlefield fans would probably check it out. You don't release two products that directly compete with each other. It would be like releasing Most Wanted Remastered for Need for Speed and then releasing a new Need for Speed a year later. It's just a competition effect that effectively takes your own audience and then splits them between products, and it's not something that's a very intelligent idea to do. And the thing about Battlefield 3 is ultimately, if this is the perfect formula for a modern game, or what's known to be the gold standard for a modern first-person shooter, if you improve the quality of life of that game, give it some new fresh coats of paint, and give it a good networking system, chances are people are going to fall in love with that game all over again. And how many of them are going to be willing to then buy the next modern Battlefield if they're so happy with the remastered Battlefield 3 that they've already received? Another real big question is probably the most damning reason to not expect a remaster for this game, is the fact that Battlefield 3 is built on Frostbite. Now, who the hell do you give that game to remaster? You know, this isn't as simple as, you know, handing a game that's on a traditional engine over to another company and saying, well, just remaster it. You know, a good example of this is Modern Warfare 1, or what's known to be Modern Warfare 4 to some people. That was handed out to a separate company, I believe it was Raven Software, who remastered that game and released it again. But that's because it's on a traditionally accessible engine, and game engines aren't all the same. You know, if I build a game in Source Engine, you know, I can hand that to hundreds of companies to deal with. I can hand it to anybody. The same applies with Unreal Engine, Unity, and other game engines that are widely accessible to a vast majority of people. Frostbite is a very specific toolset. It's a very specific game engine that takes ages to learn by the looks of things. And, you know, EA has bought this engine. You know, they're rolling it out to all of their development teams, Motive, Criterion, everybody's using this game engine. Hell, even FIFA runs on Frostbite in the modern day and age. But the mad thing about that is that there are so many development companies that just wouldn't be able to use it. You'd have to go in and teach people to use Frostbite, which is what they've done in the past. And the simple fact of the matter is that that is a compellingly long process, and there is no company that EA could outsource to do that or make that happen for them. Unless they were willing to throw a good amount of time and money behind it, which is unlikely for a remastered game. This is a real problem for how eligible the idea of a Battlefield 3 remaster is, because, well and truly, you'd need all of DICE or some of DICE to actually work on remastering Battlefield 3, and if you were going to do it any justice, you'd likely need some people who actually worked on the original game. And bearing in mind that DICE literally cancelled all support for Battlefield 5 as well as Star Wars Battlefront 2 to throw their entire staff behind the game, then it does raise a lot of questions as to whether or not absolutely anybody here is working on a remaster, or if this is just some kind of tin pot dream. I would most likely suspect the latter, because there's no way they'd be able to hire an outsourced company, or they'd have to teach that outsourced company, which would take a lot of time and a lot of assets and resources away from the development of a game that's really important to them. And ultimately, I just don't see it. I don't see this being a thing. DICE LA is no longer DICE LA. They're working on different things in different places now, and seemingly to me, I can't think of any conceptual space where a Battlefield 3 remaster could be made. Again, linking back to the engine problem here, there is no other company I can think of that doesn't have their hands full with something. Even Criterion is working on a new Need for Speed game, and the other companies that we know of that use the Frostbite engine are all working on some kind of unannounced Star Wars game or unannounced other title. Ultimately, Battlefield 3 doesn't really need all that much remastering. The graphics look fantastic. You literally just have to make the console game look prettier. You'd have to port it over to PS4 and Xbox One as well as the upcoming consoles, and it would require some new networking, which is in fact a much more challenging task than it seems. But overall, the game itself is in a fantastic way and could look fantastic and run fantastically on new consoles and the most recent consoles in the current generational lineup. But I just don't think it's there. For me, I don't see the idea of releasing a Battlefield 3 remaster the year before most likely releasing a modern shooter. It seems incredibly damaging to the overall point that they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve with the game, and I don't think it's a good way to go forward for Battlefield. And contrary to what we've seen with Call of Duty, it makes no sense to release Battlefield 3 Remastered at the same time as the new shooter, because again, like we saw with the old Call of Duty, the old game will likely overtake it in some places, especially if the new title is bad. I think it was Advanced Warfare or Infinite Warfare, where Modern Warfare Remastered had more players because the new game was trash. And that's just not a situation you'd want to put yourself in unless you're completely lacking any kind of confidence in the product you're producing. And considering they've thrown every single member of staff at DICE on the next game, I highly doubt that's a position they're in. Anywho, folks, that's about it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like, and I'll catch you again in the next one.